Hello everybody and welcome to this episode of the Frog Forests. Today we're going to be breaking down what's going on in the lives of these specific gray tree frogs. And the gray army as a whole has been a staple and a fan favorite to the entire YouTube channel for some time now. If we're going to talk about the lives of these gray tree frogs, we have to start with its founding father, the gray tree frog Bane. This rescued frog, if not for him, it's very possible there might not be a gray army in our care today. Bane has continued to battle a parasitic nematode that's plagued him and been a thorn in his side, causing lethargy, weight loss, and also prolapses time from time. And while this has all been happening, we're awaiting the results from a fecal exam to figure out if the gray army is still positive for these nematodes. If they're negative, the hope is we have 3 or 4 more tests to go until we can guarantee that these guys are healthy again. But until then, it's the most exciting part of being a frog keeper. It's feeding time. And let's examine how Bane eats this banded cricket. First, he rips it out of my hand ferociously, and he's grabbing it and clamping down, and he has 2 teeth in the roof of his mouth that are piercing the cricket. And as he's pushing it closer to his throat, he closes his eyes to push the cricket even farther down in his stomach. It's so exciting and astonishing to see a ballistic tongue and eyes that accommodate for what the frogs lack. It's one of the most exciting things if you're a frog keeper, just to see how these animals eat. Dante's turn was a little bit different. As I wanted to be fair and offer Dante a cricket, he usually grabs them within a couple of seconds, but at this time, whether he was camera shy or full from a previous feed, he just was reluctant to take this cricket, regardless on my best attempts. But you know what they say, one man's trash is another man's treasure. Bane wasted no time at all grabbing this cricket and repeating the cycle with clamping down, piercing it with his teeth, and pushing it down his throat with his eyes helping. These are some of the most astonishing and exciting videos to make if you're a frog keeper. It almost looks like he's smiling. That must have been a very tasty cricket for him. As I was putting Bane down here, I wanted to kind of show the weight that he's put on along with the other members of the gray army, because Melania, a female gray tree frog, was battling the parasitic nematodes and did not have significant weight compared to these other 3 guys. This was one of the first times that I can actually show the different coloration of Bane as opposed to other gray tree frogs. He's the distinctly darker colored looking gray tree frog. This was one of the very first times that I could show all 4 of the gray tree frogs in one shot as they were feeding. It wasn't necessarily the most exciting clip because they didn't go bonkers for these crickets, but it was just one of the most exciting things to see everybody on camera. Bane had a really difficult transition, losing his longtime partner Christian, who if you've seen the previous video, then you know what I'm talking about. This tank has been thoroughly examined to eradicate the parasites, but while Bane is trying to get through this new time in growing this relationship among these new gray tree frogs, there was another gray tree frog that had been battling the same parasites as him. Melania's fight was a little bit more uphill, and it looked like she was going to pass. This gray tree frog was on strike from eating for about 3 months. It was one of the most difficult times. She was dealing with these parasites, and it really looked that she was going to sit in this position until she died. It was over a month and a half that I can guarantee she didn't eat anything, even though the 3-month course that she was refusing to eat, she was grabbing some here and there. But finally, it was one of the most exciting and inspirational events that took place within the channel. I was able to document one night Melania woke up and decided to eat. This was one of the most exciting and inspirational times for me recording, because it meant that an animal who was in harm's way was finally deciding that she wanted to live more than she was willing to suffer at the hands of these parasites. Melania began her ascension attacking these crickets, and she's now beginning to challenge Meredith for the status of the dominant Grey Army member in this hierarchy of gray tree frogs. It's truly astounding what she's been able to accomplish within 2 weeks. This frog went from not eating at all, looking like she was laying on her deathbed, to now one of the most inspirational and one of the clips that has the most symbolism in it for me, period. Melania was not sticking to the glass and climbing anything for about 3 or 4 months. She was continuing to wither away. But as she showed how she's been eating and rebounding, she began her climb at her ascension, escaping the hands of death and actually moving towards a regular life that gray tree frogs can live in captivity. And finally, it's a very exciting time to report from Melania, because it appears that she's come out on top of this parasite. Regardless on if she's still positive, we know now that she has a willingness to eat and a willingness to survive. So right now, Melania is beginning to challenge Meredith for that dominant status. Regardless on if you're a David or a Goliath in the Grey Army, you're still important. And while Dante is no Goliath, he's still a very fascinating and a very vocal little frog. Check this out. So I have a cockroach in frame here that I thought Dante was going to eat, but watch this very carefully. He overlooks the most prevalent cockroach, and he actually got one that was out of frame. At first I thought he just lunged at nothing, but when I played it back and I actually looked at what he was doing, he got one of the cockroaches out of frame, and I thought it was so humorous to put in that I had to show it. But along with doing really interesting and kind of odd behavior, Dante loves to perch on this platform. This platform is exposed to UVB, and it's also the highest point. There's no substrate in the Grey Army's tank because the parasites will burrow into the ground, and they're microscopic. They will actually climb through an opening in the frog, and they'll begin to attack, breed, and reproduce more parasites. So the tank has to be spotless. This is a new approach that we've been taking in trying to aggressively eradicate the parasite. And while I've been talking, we've actually transitioned to Meredith, who's another gray tree frog that's been thriving along with Dante, even though this parasite has been devastating the Grey Army. This is her highlight reel, just showing her dominance of being the top Grey Army member in the hierarchy of the gray tree frogs. We could be here for a very long time if we're going to look at her highlight reel just within the past few months. I just wanted to show her dominance and how not only has she put weight on while dealing with a parasite, but just how ferocious and aggressive this female gray tree frog is. There's really nothing to complain about and nothing negative to report about. Meredith has actually overtaken everybody, and she is hands down the dominant hunter and also the heaviest gray tree frog within the Grey Army. It's hers to lose. Meredith brings a lot of optimism to the battle with these parasitic nematodes because she shows the first signs of a frog that not only can thrive but also can continue to dominate inside this ecosystem. Regardless on Melania and Meredith battling it out for the top, let's make no mistake that Bane at one time was the dominant gray tree frog in his enclosure, so don't count him out. As we draw to a close in this episode, we just want to remind everybody that we're still thinking and cherishing Christian. Thank you. Please like and subscribe for more content.